reproductive rights are under assault in the United States. And what's worse, the rationale put forth by the Supreme Court to justify rolling back nearly 50 years of precedent that there's no implicit right to privacy in the Constitution lays the groundwork for a full court press on a host of other settled cases. Deep Listens is taking action, and we need your help. Of course, we want you to learn about the elected officials in your area and vote in every single election, but we'd like you to consider contributing to the national network of abortion funds as well. The NNAB is a clearinghouse of regional abortion and reproductive health organizations across the United States. Their goal is to remove financial and logistical barriers to abortion access, centering on those looking for assistance and organizing at the intersection of racial, economic, and reproductive justice. You can contribute to the NNAB directly at abortionfunds.org/donate. You can also use their site to locate an abortion fund in your area so you can keep your money local and aid your neighbors. Thank you, and now back to your regularly scheduled podcast. Last time I saw you, you were on stage. Your hair was wild, your eyes were bright, and you were in a rage. You were swinging your guitar around because they wanted to hear the sound, but you didn't want to play. And I don't blame you. Hello, good people. Welcome to Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we explore role-playing video games in depth. My name is Jeff Root, the host and the Mononote green slime of this operation. Joining us, as always, we have the Denju bug, Braden. Hello, Braden. That is Braden Arbitrary Water, redacted, by the way. Braden, are you there? Did we lose you?
Oh, sorry. Hello. I'm here to summon monsters from the pit of hell with my computer.
The power of cyberpunk. Also joining us, as always, we have the Yuki Hakuma Budo of the group. It is Chris. Zombie Pie redacted. Hello, Chris.
I didn't get to date anime portraits like in any modern Atlas game wherein I can just live my own little fanciful fantasies about these underaged, impressionable teenagers in ways that are not problematic at all, or as a teenager, date my teacher. So this game's bullshit.
If you're curious why we're concerned about why you can't date the hot anime teens in this game, that's because we're talking about the origins of the Persona series. We're talking about Digital Devil Monogatari, Megami Tensei, also known as Digital Devil Story, Megami Tensei.
Not Digital Devil Saga.
Yes, very important. The S.
Not Shin Megami Tensei, you fuckers.
Hey, you could have worded that a little bit differently, Braden, to not put people who could make intelligible, informed mistakes based off of the titles of video games and the naming conventions of Atlas.
I'm sure this won't come up at all.
Not Devil Summoner, not Devil Survivor, not Soul Hackers, not Devil Summoner.
I played Soul Hackers on my own prerogative, so you don't even need to. You
not
take
Shin
that game.
Megami Tensei.
Take that game out of your mouth.
This is not Demi
Shin
Kids.
Megami Tensei 9.
This is the first, though perhaps not the first released, game set in the Megami Tensei universe. It was developed, this version, which, to reiterate, is called Digital Devil Monogatari Megami Tensei, and you can translate some of those words if you want. We can do that for you later. It was developed by Atlas, the Persona people, the Karate Kid people, and it was published by Namco. Originally, it was released September 11th, 1987, in Japan. It was subsequently released on the Super Famicom in a remake by Opera House that was published by Atlas in 1995, and on a proprietary Atlas-operated mobile phone shop at some point in 2004. And that's it. It has never been officially translated. There are a couple different versions of this that are fan-translated and out there for you. We're going to talk about several aspects of this thing. We're going to put our blindfolds on and touch this elephant together. It's going to be a good time. Love that parable. If you'd like to be a part of the elephant touching that we do, or touching really anything, we got all sorts of good touchings going on our Deep Listens Discord that you can go to. You can join this fun blindfold touch party by going to patreon.com/deeplistens. Just touch the put money into the Patreon button on that Patreon site. Any dollar amount that you contribute to that will get you into there. If you donate at the $3 level, it's not a donation, we are not a charity, you will be able to submit a game to us that will go into the slush pile of RPGs, which we will draw from on an alternating basis. This was a submission from Borgmaster in our community.
Jeff, don't forget, when we reach certain levels of patrons, we're going to play some real special video games. Like
Indeed.
Ultima 9, when we reach 30 patrons.
We also, I suppose, do have the looming threat of Anthem, should they decide to turn that off. I'm amazed they haven't done that yet, to be honest. Just floored. If you'd like to talk to us about what sort of characters we're going to build in Anthem, or send us hot tips on how to play
be the
Anthem,
guy with the Iron Man suit.
You can send those to inquiries@deep.lol. That's an email address. It is electronic mail based. You can use Thunderbird or your favorite email client to use that.
I haven't thought of Thunderbird in a long time.
I've had to do too much thinking about Thunderbird at my job.
Bravo, Jeff.
You could also use Outlook.
Thunderbirds, you upgrade them from rocks. They have a chance per the amount of them in the stack.
That are listening to this podcast, or my Hotmail my people who still haven't converted their Hotmail accounts to the current naming system. Raise your hands.
I had a Hotmail for a long time. I liked it.
I had a Hotmail for a while.
If you'd like to see the fruits of the labors of Off the Deep End laboring, if you want to see what we are giving birth to, you can see that birth. It's at bit.ly/OTDE rank. That's bit.ly/OTDE rank. I've sure said some horrible stuff opening this episode up, but that's okay, because a lot of parts of the original Megami Tensei are dubious and kind of bad. So
questionable at best.
Do we have anything we would like to shill, promote, advertise, defame, debase, or otherwise talk about before we get into it?
We could talk about Chris and I saw a movie yesterday.
Oh, yes, you did.
Oh, hey, yeah. So we also watched an OVA, and we wanted to set the bar of what should we or one expect in a questionable, curious OVA of any sorts. So recently, and this is actually incredibly charitable because normally Japanese media companies are not so understanding of making things available to the international audience. But the works of Osamu Tezuka are becoming more and more available on YouTube for absolutely $0.
Legally from his production company.
Yeah. With no barriers to entry, so you don't even need to VPN this shit.
It's like Gundam. They just put a lot of that stuff on YouTube.
So what did
we didn't watch Astro Boy though, Chris?
Yeah, we didn't watch Astro Boy. What did we watch?
We didn't watch Dororo.
No, that would be too good. So we decided to watch one of three Tezuka's historical adult, in quotations, adult films. We saw Cleopatra, and boy, that movie sure is something.
Yeah. So Jeff, have you seen Osamu Tezuka's Cleopatra from 1970?
No, I have seen some Astro Boy, and I have read most of the Buddha series, I guess, that Tezuka animated. Is he animate? Drew? It's a manga. It's a manhwa. But yeah.
No, a manhwa is Korean.
I know. That's why.
Manhwa.
I'm familiar. I need no explanation
remember,
there.
Jeff, when we watched Legend of Five Crystals, and we're like, wow, this is uncomfortably horny? What if Buddha and all of its historical sensibilities had the horniness of Five Crystals?
Look, there's a little bit of horniness in early Buddha, that's all I'm saying. But nothing compared to Cleopatra, from what you've told me.
Yeah, the thing about, the difference between Tezuka and Go Nagai is that Tezuka at least had
some
restraint. The wherewithal. No, he had the wherewithal to put all of his weird, horny shit in experimental art films, like this one. but boy howdy, okay. Cleopatra is a movie about Cleopatra, the historical figure, and is a surprisingly straight anime take on that.
Yeah, but then eventually things start to fall apart. Let's just say around the 5 to 10 minute mark. I know that that's a generous thing because I feel like I can count on two hands the number of times I saw a woman that had a top.
Yeah.
There's some depictions of native populations. Let's just say that not good.
Have you ever wanted to see Roman soldiers doing the kind of brutalities Roman soldiers were known for, but with the kind of plucky cartoonishness one would expect from the father of Astro Boy?
No.
What if I told you there's a scene where a guy has to fight someone from Africa in an arena, and the skin tone for that person is
very dark, and
they are also a lumbering barbarian beast.
What if I told you
man?
That gladiator wins the fight by pulling out a 9mm pistol and shooting the guy
in the head.
In the head.
And then we have a weird subcurrent about how Cleopatra is like this man-eater plotting against Rome.
But also she's weak. She's a weak woman and too easily influenced. My point is...
Join the Discord to learn more about weird
Discord
stuff like this.
See my live reaction to that. But when it comes to the classic films of anime, people talk about, the works of, let's say, Mamoru Oshii or what's his name? Satoshi Kon. You could talk about like Angel's Egg if you want like the weirder, more experimental stuff.
Line is fine.
Yeah, but don't watch Cleopatra.
Yeah.
It's weird and horny, and it doesn't know if it wants to be an artsy movie about history or like a weird softcore thing or a wacky cartoon.
I feel like the 80s, 90s era, there's a lot of stuff there that is just historically important and still worth watching. Once you start to get into the 70s, even closer and closer to the 70s, 60s, you're starting to roll the dice. Like what? Star Blazers? Okay, fine. You like your big battleship Yamato.
Captain Harlock.
Space Captain Harlock is fine. Maybe there are a couple of episodes of Captain Tsubasa because you like stuff like that.
Speed Racer.
Galaxy Express 999, maybe.
Have either of you
Lupin
seen
the Third?
A film, an anime, I guess it's an OVA called The Sensualist.
No.
It is as horny as it sounds. It is up mostly on YouTube. My wife found it through Instagram. I think someone just posted like, clips of it set to cool music and was like, this looks kind of like the animation seems interesting. It looks very much like a VHS rip of it, and it's one of those like it's not been released on digital platforms or really any digital media at any point. It looks like it was just strictly a VHS thing. But it's like an hour long. It's in like 6 parts up there. The 5th part is just gone, but that's up in clips on someone else's video, and it is just a horny mess, basically.
I pine for the olden days of watching an anime in 15-minute chunks illegally uploaded to YouTube.
Yeah. It reminded
with fan notes in the margins.
With fan subs.
Look, I think it says a lot.
Saying anime used to be good back in the heady days of 2010.
And Crunchyroll came in and ruined everything.
We're getting off track, but it says a lot that a lot of those classic 60s and 70s animes are getting rebooted with different directors and sensibilities. Like Urusei Yatsura got a 2022 reboot.
Urusei Yatsura was, I think, 80s. But yeah.
Still.
You want to watch you want to watch an actually fun, weird anime movie. Watch the second Urusei Yatsura movie. It's on, I think, Retro Crush or something.
Yeah.
It is Mamoru Oshii discovering that he can make a movie about whatever the hell he wants. So he takes the original anime harem comedy and turns it into this trippy, dreamlike exploration. And then, you can see where he got to Ghost in the Shell from there.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about Tenchi Muyo?
I mean, if you're going to bring up
Let's watch some
Tenchi Muyo,
fucking Tenchi Muyo.
how about Visions of Escaflowne?
Yeah,
How about
Escaflowne is
Wolf's
great.
Rain? Anyway, I've seen
Okay.
anime. And
This is just going to be us sitting in a semicircle naming anime from the 90s and
80s that we
2000s.
Deviants would rather sit around in a circle naming anime instead of going to therapy. There's your joke for the day. We must talk about this game, and in order to talk about this game, we kind of have to create the universe as we always do. But I'm going to introduce this one.
Start with an apple pie from scratch.
So here's my description of Megami Tensei that I came up with. You ready? Is everyone ready? Everyone's sitting down, holding onto their chairs,
Okay, let me get into a nice position.
limbered up. Megami Tensei is a potent blend of a wizardry cargo cult, some dubious light novels, and the Japanese bubble economy. Spawned from the fictional works of Aya Nishitani, this game is a blobber-style dungeon crawler with a crucial differentiating factor. You can talk to the creatures in these dungeons. You can even retain their services at a cost. Furthermore, you can use fell magics to combine two demons into a third, new demon of higher potency. This formula is the secret sauce of the series, and it's fair to say that some of the criticisms you can level at this game remain all the way up through the most recent entry in the series, Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Or Soul Hackers 2.
Or Soul Hackers 2. But it still works in this form. Kinda. There's so much of this series' DNA was like crystallized right here. Everything that comes out of the next two games in this series is actually making it good. But like getting the vibes more correct and getting some of the structure a little more interesting to engage with beyond just like wandering through mazes.
It is genuinely impressive how honest Atlas has been to its audience about what it is willing to do to shake things up, like genuinely, because they really don't, but they kind of do. They've been making similar-ish games from where we're starting here all the way up to now for quite some time.
It is impressive.
I mean, it's them and goddamn Nippon
Yuji
Falcom,
Yeah.
that have basically stuck to their guns this verdantly. Because you can't say that about Square Enix. You can't even say that about
Dragon Quest.
Enix. I think that Enix should get credit for moving in some direction every time. Like, let's say, punctuated evolution, punctuated equilibrium, where they move the bar ever so slightly, everyone gets caught up, and then they move the bar ever so slightly in a segmented format.
Yes. The thing I'll say about Shin Megami Tensei as a series is the way this core has been. They have branched from this core in so many weird directions over the years, but the basic core remains the same of, hey, y'all like summoning demons?
Yeah, it's summoning demons. They still hold on to this like old school dungeon crawling sensibility that I even feel like Nihon Falcom has moved away from.
Yeah, even Persona 5 still is very much a traditional ass dungeon crawler when you get to the parts that are dungeon crawl.
Which, I mean, we don't need to get into
We
this,
don't need
but
to get into Persona 5.
there is an element of a conflict here because I don't think they realize that their storytelling ambitions are in conflict with that gameplay underpinning. But overall,
we're not doing
the fact that this game doesn't have that, I think that it is more palatable from that perspective. It's not perfect by any means. It is not perfect. So I guess, Braden, you and me are the ones that can kind of talk about it.
Yes.
Which CRPGs did this game remind you of?
So I feel like
Wizardry.
this feels very directly influenced by Wizardry 4, The Revenge of Werdna. And that game we might cover ourselves at some point because Wizardry 4 is bonkers bananas and also deeply hateful.
It's Maybe the most malicious CRPG ever made. It
It's
has a
up there.
reputation of being that way. And for whatever reason, Japan gravitated towards the maliciousness of Wizardry 4. Like the, you should be level 30, but you're level 28.
Hey, fucker,
that's not good
you
enough.
teleported into this wall. No, the whole thing with Wizardry 4 was that you didn't level up. You you summoned monsters to fight with you.
Yeah. Like, if you got one, like, until you had a monster that could, like, create some sort of light, you were basically wandering blind in a hole. Right. And the game was very happy to just let you do that in Wizardry 4. Wizardry 4 is about as far as I think Surtech ever really pushed the boat out in that series, in some sense.
And this is why Wizardry 5 is a counter-reaction to what they ended up doing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Wizardry 5 is kind of the template for pretty much every single modern Japanese dungeon crawler.
It's the Rosetta Stone of pretty much everything after about 1990, really.
Maybe Jeff can talk about this. Like, why Wizardry 4? Why do these dungeon crawlers all like the maliciousness of Wizardry 4? That's the one.
That is a great question for Hardcore Gaming 101. Kurt Collada. Kurt's actually cited. I talk about him like he's like a close friend or something. He's a guy I know I've interacted over the years. He's like cited in, I think, the Wikipedia entries and like the fan wiki for Megami Tensei stuff of just like things he has said about this series. He knows more about Wizardry than I do. In fact, I think both of you know more about Wizardry than I do too. I don't know why. I do know that Atlas as a company is 100% steeped in Wizard. Like, they are absolutely from that milieu. Like, it wasn't some like wink and a nod thing. They're just like, no, we are huge Wizardry fans and we kind of just want to make one of those. I get the sense that the author of this may have also been a fan as well. To wit, I kind of want to talk a little bit about him, if that's all right.
Regale me.
No problem.
I don't have a ton of notes, but I'm, again, assuming that among these notes you could put played Wizardry and really liked it. So Aya Nishitani, or Nishitani Aya, if you are following current, I guess, Japanese conventions of how names should be said, as well as the old way. He was born in 1955. I don't know where, but he graduated from Hokkaido University with an economics degree. So he's a pencil pusher, and he's getting in probably around age 20, 22, when the Japanese economy is looking for a lot of economists and people who can do very dull jobs for very long hours. But despite this, like, just being well suited to being a very dull person, he's a weirdo. He seems like a person with, how would you describe, okay, you two would probably have a word for this. What is there is a word for the phenomenon of a person in the West who is a deviant for Japanese culture. We call them weeaboos. How does this work the other direction?
Oh, we had this talk last time. So I don't know if I've ever told this story to Jeff, but I recently told this story to Braden. I visited my family on my grandmother's sides that live in Japan, and I met someone, Jeff, who is Japanese and super loves Western games. They don't give a damn about the Switch. They don't care about the PlayStation. They have all Xboxes. They've got a gaming rig. They love Halo. They love Warframe. And they like PUBG. And they're all like, man, look at all these American games with these guns. It's cool. Man, I don't care about loot boxes. Give them all to me. And they're like 18.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, this person exists. Like, this is why if you go to, like, some of these classic video game stores in Japan where it's like, oh, I'm going to buy all this weird Japanese stuff that I can't get in the West. Like, you're going to see, like, Western versions of Xbox games and, like, PC games that are only in English that are being sold for just the same price. I don't know the exact name for it, but there are totally people who are not down to clown with Japanese games, but they want the Western stuff. They want the American stuff. They'll even, like, the way that we set up VPNs to watch anime, they're setting up VPNs to watch, like, CSI.
Yeah, that was what I was about to say. Like, are they just watching, like, Law and Order SVU and Lost, the Magnum PI reboot? I guess Prime Minister Koizumi was one of these people too. He's a big Elvis dork, like just the biggest homer in the world. Anyway, Nishitani was into astrology, and he was also into Western depictions of magic stuff. I think the nexus that he's described for this is Lovecraft, which, like, yeah. There's also an author that he was into. His name was Hanmura Ryo, who was a Japanese science fiction author. Not a lot of this person's work is in English, but there's 2 short stories that I kind of want to look up that are called Cardboard Box, and then there's another one called Tansu. I am always down to read sort of eldritch horror shit that's not from Lovecraft, or people even kind of associated with him, because I think that the genre can be neat and is just kind of poisoned by this one horrible bigoted dude who like overclouds everyone else's work. So anyway, interested in like fiction, interested in like magic, interested in the occult to an extent, and I think interested in technology and to an extent gaming. He also is interested in writing, which is where the story actually starts. He gets some short pieces published in a magazine called OPC, like O as in like oh, like OH exclamation point, the exclamatory O, PC.
Oh.
These stories are about this misanthropic high school boy who decides to use evil magics on a computer to summon demons to do his bidding, to proto-Death Note his like enemies and stuff. These are well received, and they're well received enough that they wind up getting compiled and released by Tokuma Shoten, which is like a very big publishing house in Japan, in 1986 as Digital Devil Monogatari Megami Tensei. This book, this kind of like, it's an odd little beginning to all of this, and it's weird to think that I think the goal at a point, because this kind of took off, was a small media empire sort of thing, and what actually comes out of it is more of like a media fiefdom, and by the mid-90s that fiefdom had just kind of turned into it's just the games. But there was kind of a push to make this a thing, and that's where I think the bubble economy part of this really comes in. So there's 2 bubble economy aspects of this that are worth talking about. One is the actual existence of Atlus at all, which was a new company at the time. It was founded in 86 from a combination of people kind of coming from other studios. One of the co-founders was Koji Okada. He winds up being the director of this game. He worked at Technos and also at Tecmo, which are 2 separate companies, prior to founding Atlus, basically. He is an enormous wizardry dork, and actually would go on in 2000 or 2001, I think, to produce an actual wizardry game. Towards the end of his career at Atlus, he produced Wizardry Tale of the Forsaken Land for the PlayStation 2. I have never played this.
Not the Ichi porno one.
No. I've looked at screenshots of this game, and it is very, very ugly. Megami Tensei is the second thing that they ever released. The first game that they produced by Atlus was on behalf of Tokuma Shoten. It was a Famicom adaptation of Labyrinth, as in Jim Henson, David Bowie, Labyrinth. I have never played this. I'm very curious, though. I can't imagine it's anything more than rough or novel at the best. They get their grubby mitts on this probably via the Tokuma Shoten tie, this being the Megami Tensei thing. There was a bidding war going on, and the rights kind of went 2 directions. The Famicom license basically got handed to Atlus. The PC license got handed to a different company called Telenet Japan. The Telenet, folks. ZP, you got to play the hot PC-88 version of Megami Tensei.
I accidentally played the hot PC-88 version of this game. Now, it's important to note that what's interesting about the PC-88 team, those of you out there might hear the name Telenet Japan Company. What the heck is that? Most people know Telenet from its later name, which is Wolf Team, which, for those of you that don't know what Wolf Team is, these were the people that were in charge of the PS1, or late PS1, all the way up to the PS2 era versions of the Tales of games. So if you have fond memories of playing Tales of Destiny, or maybe even like they made some of those late PC 88 Valis games. They made a
the
Mega Drive port of Master of Monsters. They had a role in the construction and development of Ys 3 at some point.
And also, some of those people broke off and formed Tri-Ace.
Yeah. The 100% the most notable thing that Telenet made as Telenet were the Valis games that were not the pornographic Valis games.
They made that they made that Granada game that sold well. They made Final Zone, which also sold well. The weird thing, the reason why I mentioned those two games is Telenet really liked making isometric video games. So the PC-88 version of the game is not at all the version that we were supposed to play for this podcast. In fact, it's a completely different video game entirely. So the personal computer version is an action role-playing game which plays from a top-down perspective. You control Nakajima, so it still has the basic characters, and you explore the labyrinthine levels of the dungeons from a top-down perspective rather than from the first-person perspective. I will tell you, I kind of preferred the PC perspective as a result. And each section of the dungeon ends with a powerful boss. You just basically kind of go... It's like a top-down version of the modern Persona games. Like, here's the dungeon, move from point A to point B. At the end of the dungeon, before you can go to the next floor, there's going to be a boss fight. Combat actually, in that version of the game, plays out in real time. So you actually need to pick your attacks, not based off of a turn-based encounter system, but there's that. It also has the real-time instancing system that we would feel more comfortable about from in like Chrono Trigger, where like you can see the little enemies moving around in the background or in the environment, and if you bump up against them, you fight them. If you don't fight them. Nakajima composes a party much like he does. It basically boils down to fighting the demons using short-range melee attacks and long-range magic attacks. And it was okay. You could tell that Wolf Team was still trying to find a way to co-op the Valis engine to do this book that they had read and kind of enjoyed.
I'd like to correct the record. I misspoke. I forgot this kind of tragic part of the story. Telenet 100% made those pornographic Valis games. It was actually like the last thing they ever did. As a, fuck, we need to bring in like one last burst of money. If you want to see some very sad hentai, might I recommend Valis X?
There's some Mahjong games that you might want to play.
Yeah,
don't.
Plenty of those too.
If you want discussions on depressing erotic video games for the PC-88,
Brady
Hardcore Gaming
or
101 has your cover.
Yeah, lots of grease. ZP, did you prefer this PC-88 game to the Famicom game outside of the actual navigation part?
Outside of the navigation part, it's a push.
Yeah.
It really, really honestly was a push. I feel like there was more meat on the bone because of the random encounter system and the leveling system with the Famicom version. I feel like you really did care more about your character's levels and gaining new abilities. There's like stat growth and attributes and points that you need to put in, whereas the personal computer version of the game is much more an action role-playing game. It's like a Diablo, but not.
But dare I say it has some gauntlet to it?
It does have some gauntlet, and as the gauntlet pervert of this team, it was fine from that perspective, but purely from that perspective.
So there were 2 games, but that's not all, because there was also an original video animation, an OVA, and we have to mention this. An OVA. So,
It's the 1980s. Japan is in an economic boom. Lots of producers doing lots of cocaine have been excited by the potential of a new format, the video cassette. What if, Chris, what if you took anime, a popular form of animation, and you put it on the video cassette, and then you sold someone the video cassette for, I don't know, tens of thousands of yen?
Too much money.
And what if you didn't have to conform to the broadcast standards that television anime has to?
We're talking about some corner cutting. We're not talking about some square Wendy burgers. We've got some curves.
I'm saying, imagine, if you will, putting lots of violence and lots of boobs on this video cassette, and then, several years later, it will get picked up by an American distributor, and it will be put on video rental store shelves, and then an entire generation of young people will be like, yeah, my mom got us Ninja Scroll accidentally, and now it fucked me up forever.
This is how my girlfriend was introduced to the concept of, human sexuality, I think, was...
God, I wish that this game had, a level of creativity and ambition of, Ninja Scroll, but this thing was, the most generic-ass, okay, 40 minutes.
It's not
40
even
minutes
a
to
good,
interpret this
trashy
book
OVA.
that needs clearly at least 90 minutes. But they've got a television budget to make a non-television thing.
It's just tacky and bad, and not even that tacky. And not even that bad. Really?
It's just boring. It's pointless. Yeah. I mean, if you're operating under the auspices of OVAs are primarily advertising pieces to get you interested about something that might be just as expensive and better, in quotations, better, fine. But normally OVAs put a good front. They give you flashy.
Usually had really good animation.
They had
that
better
was
animation
the
than
thing,
stuff
right?
you would see on television, but you don't get that here. In fact, I think this might be one of the ugliest things I've seen in a while.
It looks like butt. It's not as it doesn't have the shock factor that I associate with a lot of 80s OVA shit. It's just kind of like a boring, semi-coherent retelling of what I imagine is the first part of the first book.
It is the first book, though. That is where the first book ends off.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's it. Which in the context of it was I think about half a dozen, short story chunks submitted to a magazine by an amateur. That got compiled into a light novel that is, light novel length, 100-page ish. Adds up. For me, it's the existence of the thing in the first place is totally unnecessary. It doesn't really change much. It is fairly literal. It gets to, I think, the core of the actual short story, which is as a vibe piece, as a wow, you've got to read it. Oh my god, it's so good. No one is saying this. That's not really a knock against Aya Nishitani or anything. It's just it's not high lit. It's not even really medium lit. It's a light novel. It's a pretty rudimentary story. It is all of the depth and maturity of Death Note fanfiction, basically. I bring up Death Note because it is basically the tone. It's an angry teenage
the anime
boy.
teen uses the power of computer demons to murder his bullies.
Yeah, he has some sort of secret power. It is not all the way disaligned from the Wizard books in some ways. As a teenager, you feel different, and you have some secret thing about you that makes you different and weird, and you can use that ability for good or ill, and he just chooses ill. Right? And yet, Media Empire. It's a bad OVA. It's up online. You should check it out. But then some video games tumbled out of this, which is what we're actually here to talk about. So, this gets published by Namco. Why Namco? Here's the answer. It's because this was kind of normal at the time. Atlas was on Game 2 at this point, after Labyrinth got picked up by Tokuma Shoten, which was probably just tied up with the distribution and publishing rights of other Labyrinth shit in Japan. Can't verify that right now, but I'm assuming that was the case. Small developers would, It was pretty normal, standard practice to latch onto an established publisher at the time. This is still not even that weird. Namco publishes for, like, From Software. From get their stuff published by, like, Activision in the United States, at least one time in recent memory. Publishing rights are weird, and platform holders are weird, so this is just like the business arrangement. Namco, though, to underscore, didn't make this game. Atlus wound up benefiting from this in a couple of ways. One, Namco, like, you know, very well-established name at the time. Their games sold well just by being from Namco. It was kind of a little badge of quality. Two, they picked up more work from Namco. They made, like, half a dozen games for them, I think, over the course of that relationship. And, like, some of them were not Megami Tensei related. They made King of Kings. Did you know?
Wow.
Yeah, it's a weird strategy game. You know, you might check out King of Kings. It's a strategy game.
That seems like something I would play.
Yeah. And you might like it for one reason. Atlus made a strategy game called King of Kings 2. It is a game that utilizes something Atlus was very interested in once it became available to them, which was the Namco 163. Now, what is the Namco 163? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Famicom, not the NES inherently, though you could do some soldering and make this work, was capable of something called expansion audio. So, the Famicom, the NES, have, if I recall off the dome, 3 sound channels, 1 square wave channel, which is usually used for bass, and 1 noise channel, which is usually just used for, like, percussion and, like, static-ish noises. There was a pinout on the Famicom, which is dummied out on a base NES, but you can, with some soldering, reactivate this pin, where if you solder the right chips onto a cartridge, you can pass more different audio to a Famicom. A couple studios took advantage of this, notably Konami and Sunsoft, but Namco was actually the one that I think used it the most.
And this is different than, like, the better audio of Famicom Disk System games.
Oh, yeah. Once you get into the disc system, though. But once you get into the disc system, you've opened up a whole can of worms.
But it is basically the same concept. Like, the disc system, I think, added 1 or 2 channels just by the actual disc system, like, box itself just, like, had hardware in it, which just, like, made those channels available. But you could just stick chips onto a Famicom cartridge and, like, basically, like, I don't remember. There's a Konami late release called The Grange Point that has, I think it's a VRC7. It is a Konami proprietary expansion audio chip in there, which basically turns that game into a Sega Genesis game. Like, it sounds like an FM synth title, just from the hardware on the cartridge. Like, The Grange Point has an insane sounding soundtrack for a Famicom cartridge. The Namco 163 chip is used in Megami Tensei 2, along with some other titles from Namco. Here's why I bring this up. I played a little bit of Megami Tensei, like, several years ago, just out of curiosity, and then I've poked Megami Tensei 2 a little bit more because, spoilers, that game's got a little bit more going on and is, in fact, by pretty much every measure, a better game. But this game shares a lot of its soundtrack with that game. It's just the tracks that show up in both games just sound better with more sound channels and richer in Megami Tensei 2 than they do in this one. But I was surprised to literally just hear, like, the same tracks just with less instrumentation in here. It was weird. It was like, oh, you guys really did just kind of iterate on the story part of this game.
Sure, and I know you guys talked about it, but, like, this game, looking back at it, Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei, branching out into no less than 7 distinct sub-franchises, including one, Persona, that has since gone on to become, like, the doyen of the traditional JRPG among consumers around the world.
Persona is a game that normies know of.
But it's just so weird that, like, you can still see the vestigial DNA that went on to inform Megami Tensei Gaiden, Majin Tensei, Devil Summoner, Persona, Devil Children, Devil Survivor. Like all of these
Demi
games,
Kids, Jack Bros,
And I mean, like,
all of these games have some sort of vestigial
Lost
DNA that,
Bible.
like we said at the start, Atlas still hasn't shook away, and it's kind of quaint to see them hold on to their guns in these weird situations.
So yeah, I played the Super Nintendo remake,
yes,
So
Which
that's
seems-
Kuyaku Megami Tensei.
which is a remake of both Megami Tensei 1 and 2. I believe you can straight up transfer your save file over from 1 once you've finished it to 2
yeah.
in a real East 1 and 2 style.
I'd forgotten that was in there until I poked around at that game a little more and then read some stuff about it online. But it's not only just a save transfer, it is like the first game ends and then there is like a brief interstitial like, but something else happened. Now play this other game, which is like notably better. Go. Which is awesome.
Yes. So
Yeah.
so Kuyaku, as far as I can tell, Kuyaku means the Old Testament also, by the way.
It looks
seems
better.
like it looks better. It has a couple quality of life things. I will say for a 1980s traditional blobber blobber, which is my favorite type of video game. No, we love a blobber here, right?
Sure. I guess
Yes.
it's been a while since we've defined a blobber. So this means that the dungeon exploration is first person. You have multiple characters that are represented at best with portraits. And as you're exploring first person dungeoning,
You move them as a group,
you move them as a
blob.
group, and then you'll bump up against a slime or
And
a
then
demon.
and then you do random encounters in this multi-floor dungeon.
Which
Stop
I
me if
guess
you've heard
that's
this
the
before.
one weird thing about this is when I play a blobber, I feel like the best way for a blobber to do this is to not have random encounters and have real world instancing. Personally,
Oh, you mean
Um,
like the highest rated game of Off the Deep End, Might and Magic 6: The Mandate of Heaven.
absolutely. Which Wizardry was even doing that. Wizardry does
Wizardry, yes, Wizardry 8 also did that.
But
Sort of.
anyways, that's aside. Boy, I was sure thinking about Might and Magic 6 as I played this game because
I was thinking, so yeah, this game is very straightforward. It has the monster summoning mechanic. It has, hey, the male character does not have magic, so make him a physical character. The lady character can do magic, and that's a thing that carried on to so many other SMT games.
what also carried on over is demon tempting or like
demon negotiation.
negotiations.
Gotta throw money at them and maybe they'll join you.
Yeah, and they've had a weird on again off again relationship with demon negotiations with the Persona game notoriously
Persona didn't have it and now it has it again.
Now then it had it and then it didn't have it and then it has it again.
And now in Soul Hackers 2 has demon negotiation.
But in this game it's like as bare bones as possible where you'll see a demon. You normally, I think that your experience points and your levels, like you traditionally want to be above their level, but
yes, you have to be above their level to get them to join your party.
You have to be above them. You can have up to 7. You can throw one of 3 resources at them to make them join them.
Yes.
Maginite, money, and items. Maginite is used for upgrading, right?
Yes.
And then you can have up to 7 demons, of which 4 can be summoned at the same time. Summon demons aid you in battle with either a physical attack or a magical attack, and they don't cost money to summon.
Yes, they cost money to summon.
That's what Maginite is that summoning demons consumes Maginite as the player's walking around, right?
I did not find Magicite to be a problem. I found money to be a much bigger problem early on because guess what? It's grindy, right?
Right.
It has era appropriate, for lack of a better word, economy.
But I don't feel like it's too much. In a lot of ways, it is simple
I
enough.
felt like the demon side of things was a little too obtuse. Like the whole relationship between the demon's attitudes and like how it relates to the moon phase, and there's cycles, and there's up to
don't
8
worry.
cycles.
I think it's literally just you can't talk to them when the moon is full, which is a thing that carried on into other Shin Megami Tensei games.
Yeah, like the moon shit is
once you
kind of
get
a
into-
nuisance, but if you've played these games for long enough, you just start being like, oh, moon's like, oh, it's a new moon. I should probably try to
moon's
go
full.
recruit Thor now.
God, we should play Nocturne.
That game kicks ass.
I mean, talk about a game that hates its audience.
Yeah, but it's good. It's the best main series SMT game.
I don't know. Let me tell you, Strange
4
Journey
is
is
fine.
pretty good.
I'm me and Jeff. Jeff, I'm with you. Strange Journey.
4 Apocalypse is better than regular 4.
The demon interactions in this game, as you can imagine, are a little limited if you're coming from a later game. They don't level up for starters, which is a huge difference.
Which is where the Wizardry 4 comparison comes into my head. Is like these monsters have fixed levels and have fixed functions, and as soon as they outlive their functionality, you fuse them or you lose them. Am I right?
And yeah, I guess that's the other thing that Atlas has still held on to is the idea of fusing. I think that it's obviously because this is such an older game, it's fiddly, and sometimes the gains are not as good as you would like. But
At
boy,
least
howdy,
you don't have to worry about skill inheritance.
Yeah, like skill inheritance and like needing to re-roll to get the magical abilities that you want.
Which is stuff that they've
It's simple.
like slowly but surely backed away from over the years.
In modern games, they finally
Just said like, look, we know you guys are
that.
safe scumming this anyway, so just mix and match. Just go for it.
Yeah, hey, hello. I mean, you want to put Mav Rakukaja on this Nekomata.
Again, this leads to like my thing where the parts of this game that I enjoyed was the fact that it didn't have all of the weirder postmodern sensibilities of Atlas. Like it was just quaint, playing something that they made that was much more straightforward. Like I didn't have to worry about weird visual novel dating sim shit.
It is very much I guess the thing that Shin Megami Tensei, brought in was the alignment system, and that's like the one thing that's missing here. Is hey, do you want to be chaos or law or neutral? And generally speaking, the neutral ending's probably the least bad.
In terms of
sometimes it's really bad. It depends.
Yeah.
Does God destroy the world or does Satan destroy the world? You choose.
Yeah, they tend to be the hardest ending to achieve just because you wind up basically having to kill God and also Satan and then some like other being as opposed to just going and killing God or Satan.
In Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse, all of the polytheism deities team up together and fuck everyone's shit up. And so you fight, I think you fight Vishnu.
I like this.
And he's one of the major enemies in that game.
I'm excited to play that game at some point.
It's good.
I know.
It's better than the regular 4.
Regular 4 is a little stately.
It has character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas all the characters in 4 are just mouthpieces for their alignment.
I mean, that's I don't know if it's even a criticism. There are characters in this game by which there are NPCs who stand and say like a line. Basically, there's not a lot of interaction that goes on beyond like talk to a shopkeeper, get heals, and fuse demons. The world is like fairly static and fairly linear, which all these games kind of are, you could say, are linear-ish beyond the like morality system that they've put in. But this is, I think, the most basic statement of that intent.
Yes.
And that stems in part from it just being based on a book that told a story. Aya Nishitani was involved in the production of this to an extent. He helped adapt the book along with the writing staff at Atlas to fit onto a, well, let's see if we do 2 megabit cartridge at the time, which is small if you think about it. And they get a lot out of that space. The world itself is, if you were to just, think about it in terms of laying all these maps out like side by side, it's like a surprising amount of space. They get away with that by making a lot of that space be tiled first-person dungeons that are not super fun to navigate anymore. I don't really like it.
I feel like also the largest these maps get is
Are they 8x8 or like 12x12 or
12, 13, 14, 15. I think they're like 15x15.
Okay. Which is big.
But at the start the floor is normally 8x8 and they're not very large.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they still have that old school sensibility. I mean, this is part of the reason why I kind of like the top-down version of the PC game, because, boy, first-person dungeon navigation in these earlier games...
You can cast Mapara and get a mini-map.
But the fact that you need to do that...
Here's my main actual gripe with this game, is it has a mini-map spell, which, like, fine, okay, it's a conceit.
At least it's better than nothing.
My problem is the map rotates when you do. I hate this so much. I hate it so much.
It can be disorienting.
And it's a thing that Kyu-Yaku Megami Tensei, the remade version of this game, does away with. That has an ordinal map or a cardinal map, mini map, that just stays north is north. You just navigate around in that space, and I find that a lot easier. It keeps me... It's not impossible, but it's a nuisance, and it's such a simple thing to, like, not do. Like, it feels harder to implement the bad version of it than to leave the good, as far as I'm concerned. So, for that and a variety of other reasons, if you were interested in playing this game, I would strongly... I'd recommend maybe look at Megami Tensei 2, because it is just a better game. B... But this isn't a total wash. I just think you should play that Super Famicom version, because the soundtrack is incredible. It has that fix alone, which really makes it worth it. It looks great, sounds great. It's a really, really insane package. And if you're like, well, I don't know Japanese, there's a fan translation, and it's pretty good.
Okay, then. Let's drop this. Would you recommend this game over if someone's already going down the route of fan translations? Would we recommend the Kyu-Yaku Megami Tensei 1 and 2 over just SMT 1 and 2?
2, I think it's harder just because I like the soundtrack of that Famicom version so much, and it's so like once you start looking at all the stuff that's packed into that original sequel, it's kind of nuts. It was a 1990 Famicom game that stuck around. Like, I've looked at a lot of old issues of Famitsu, and they have this like reader poll they do every issue where they just like, what are you guys' favorite games right now? Just like a running top 10 or top 20. And Megami Tensei 2 was on there through like most of the early 90s. Like, that game had staying power, and I think it's because it actually holds up pretty well. It doesn't get into the morality system stuff of Shin Megami Tensei, but just on its like it's dorkness, it's like apocalypse theme stuff that it goes into, and the fact that I think this genre is just kind of meat and potatoes fun in some sense. Like, I like fucking blobber dungeon shit.
I don't think it does the blobber dungeon shit all that well.
I think it does it fine for what it is.
Yeah, it's serviceable, but you give me that and a little more meat on the bone in terms of like plot, and I think you have a winner, and that's why I think Megami Tensei 2 does it.
All right. Let's do this. Let's go on the timeline and let's see how far back in time. So I think we're saying, if you really are a dedicated fan, I think you could still have a fun time with this game.
I think this game is very playable,
but
especially if you have any fundamentals from.
I think the question would
SMT game.
I think the question would be, let's say that I'm a guy who thinks Persona 4 or 5 is the greatest video game ever made. And I'm like, oh man, this Atlas, they've got their finger on the pulse on the JRPG genre. Okay. I want to go back to the classics.
Set up this straw man for me.
I know, it is a straw man. I fully admit it is, but I would probably direct them to go down the Shin Megami Tensei games, like Shin Megami Tensei 2, rather than the Digital Devil Story games.
I think they lean a lot harder into the attack and dethrone
post-apocalyptic
God
dark tone.
and
I think that's the other thing is like people like when Atlas makes these shockingly dark video games that have
demons
these
invade Tokyo
gods, and they like the whole part of the teenagers need to deal with weird, ridiculous, over-the-top, world-ending events. And while yes, in theory that's a little bit here, I think it's better represented in the later MegaTen 2, MegaTen 3.
Yeah,
like MegaTen 3 is Nocturne, which I think that
Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne is...
I can ask a Persona 5 fan to play Nocturne to understand what these older games were like.
Yeah, just
they're
going
to have a bad time. They're going to complain about
fucker.
how much harder it is, but
Nocturne is a fucker. But I feel like, in a lot of ways, this is foundational. And if you want the good shit, I would play Shin Megami Tensei. Maybe if you want, just don't play Persona 1.
Yeah, that's maybe the only
first-person dungeon crawling in that one is bad. Especially when it's the same monotonous corridors in a school.
We could probably go down some weird holes, like just discussing the intricacies of the Megami Tensei franchise and the quality of the first-person or third-person dungeoneering over time.
If you ask me, I'm not a huge fan of their tactics games.
Yeah, I wish I liked Devil Summoner. Survivor.
Nope, not Summoner. You fucked up. It's Survivor. Devil Summoner is the sub-series that's Devil Summoner, and then there's Devil Summoner Soul Hackers. Okay. And then there's Devil Summoner, the Ryuru Kuzunoha games. And then there's Soul Hackers 2, a perfectly normal naming scheme.
There's the offshoot children's game. We could really do a special on weird spin-offs for kids. Because we could play the, what was that weird pre-Drazzle family kid game that they made for Nippon Falcom that it's like timed? Romancia.
Junior, though? Anyway.
Finally.
You could make we could do a one-off podcast about weird
for kids.
Children offshoots of weird bespoke hardcore JRPGs, but
that's just your way of getting Gino to play Mystic Quest.
Is this also how you talk about Pokemon? Which I think it's worth noting cribs some of the stuff from this game.
Pokemon, yeah.
Like Game Freak and Nintendo, who passed up on the rights to the Megami Tensei franchise, by the way. They were pitched on it and they said no thanks. Owe a certain debt to this game, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Like, it's not one-to-one. I don't think they invented, again, as we've pointed out, Surtech may have invented some of this in broad strokes. Bokoska Wars may have really invented some of this, but anyway. You can draw a line there pretty easily. And it's a baby game. Really don't want to play Pokemon.
Anyways, coming back to this game, there's a very basic story. It follows the book to almost a fault. It's a prototype in a lot of ways if we're looking at it. I wish that the exploration side of things was a little bit more rewarding. You sure do spend that first dungeon looking at that same little green slime icon over and over again.
There is a surprisingly limited monster roster in this first game.
Yeah, there's
128 kilobits of graphic data. Which is, you could fit several copies of all the graphical data of this game onto a floppy disk for reference, which is really wild. But yeah, it is. Do you like that slime? Do you like that weird little red? Oh God, what did they translate it as?
Worm thing.
Yeah, and they represent one at a time, so it'll just say like slime times 4. So really, you're fighting like a pile of slimes represented by a single sprite, which is a thing the series did for a long time.
But for something that was made in 87, I thought that the whole catching monsters and fusing elements was like shockingly in depth. And, the stuff in this game that looks good and looks well. On top of that, again, there's like something about Atlas's unflinchingly dark tone and atmosphere that really helped to differentiate them from other JRPG developers at this time. And continues to do so.
Oh yeah, there's a casino in here too. Forgot to mention, which is dumb.
Yes, minigames.
Yeah, like there's other shit. Do you like gambling? Do you like gambling for special rocks? This game has it.
I love special rocks.
I think I may have exhausted things to say about this, honestly. Do you guys have any other great observations before we rank it?
It says a lot
it made
that
me want to play Soul Hackers 2.
Yeah,
which I bought and still haven't touched.
It's a hard game.
An hour of.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It when you are not ready to make the step from one dungeon to the next or one floor to the next, it will kick your teeth in. It is of that era, and it's not for the faint of heart. I think that there are better, older Atlas titles that are worth going back to have a better appreciation of how far they have come or what is Atlas of this era. I think that there are just better games to do or play or experience. But I didn't hate my time, and I actually think that once we're done with this podcast, I'm going to make the effort to finish this game.
Yeah.
As crazy as that sounds. It's, from what I hear, I think that there's something about these games other than like Dragon Quest 1 and 2. Like by the time we get to Dragon Quest 3, even in Japan, JRPGs had this reputation of being like ridiculously stupidly long. And from what I can tell from here, as long as you put in the work, this game tops out at like 30 hours, which I know 30 hours is still a lot, but
I got to the end of the first dungeon.
That's as far as I've made it as well.
And I feel like I would not change my opinion anymore if I kept playing it. It's pretty straightforward in that sense.
Yeah, but like that,
I'd looked at some maps. There's some teleport mazes later on.
Yeah, and see, that's the weird thing. Like, I wish I was doing this with the second game because at least, spoiler alert, in the second game, you fucking kill God?
Yeah,
yeah.
The second game, I think, is the one that has Jesus boots in it, which is the only time they've explicitly named Jesus Christ, the son of Mary, in any of these games, which is weird because, like, they, in some sense, clearly really don't give a shit. And yet, I think with that one specifically, they've been very, like, you can't just put Jesus in here. That's too hot. It's like I'm surprised that they've not taken that card out since, just based on how happy they are to literally just take Thor and Vishnu and smash them together to make, like, a pixie. I
think that's like, as I said, and people misinterpreted this blog when I wrote it, but like Persona 3 might be the end of an era in terms of them just definitively taking a huge storytelling risk because now they know everything they make needs to be some sort of multimedia spin-off generating thing.
That are popular.
Yeah.
As opposed to for weirdos.
And then also just like things are no longer self-contained. Things have to be a part of these metaverses.
It's a very popular brand.
Yeah, they've not gone back to the Jesus well, and they've not gone back to the Hitler well, which is a thing they also did in the Persona games.
Yeah,
Persona 2.
Insane.
Not on Game Pass.
Maybe one of these days they should remake Persona 2 and it finds a way to figure out how to make those two games communicate.
I mean, in the Persona 2, in the PSP version that came out over here of Innocent Sin, they just gave him glasses.
Oh, good.
They gave him sunglasses, and that's how they did it.
Just shaved his mustache off and gave him glasses. I'm in the mood to rank this.
Okay, let's rank this
this seminal Famicom dungeon crawler, I guess.
Okay, let's also say what Famicom dungeon crawlers would we recommend?
So I've been operating on the assumption that the version of Wizardry on the Famicom has some sort of like horrible bugged thing in it for a while, and I've looked around trying to find out where I got that information from, and I've not seen it mentioned anywhere. So if that version is in fact like functional and you can stomach playing Wizardry with a controller, Wizardry might be a thing you could look at there.
What was the one, Braden? What was the one that Interplay made? Is that Swords and Serpents?
Bard's Tale?
Swords and Serpents.
Wizards and Warriors?
No, Swords and Serpents.
Okay. You're just making up game names now.
Wasn't there a game
Carrion
called
Crawlers and
Arcana?
Catacomb.
Arcana is a Super Nintendo game
God damn it.
from HAL Laboratories. Swords and Serpents, people seem to like this.
I seem to really like that game.
All right. But yeah, let's
That
rank
is a
it
Boris
anyways.
Vallejo work. I'm looking at this box art and it's like, that looks like Boris. And it's just Boris Vallejo crafted box art.
I hate to say this, Jeff, maybe you should just stick to Dragon Quest Dragon Warrior if you want a good dungeon crawler on the NES. I mean, Crystalis. Let's play some Crystalis. It's not a
Crystalis is an
traditional one.
ARPG, and that's a different thing, but Crystalis is good. I think if you're looking, like, that was the whole thing that Dungeon Quest was trying to really thread the needle. Dragon Quest, right? Is like, how can we take this dungeon crawl RPG experience and, sand most of the edges off and make it feel okay on a thing with 8 buttons, basically. And the case could be made that they really fucking nailed it, right?
I have not played the NES Famicom version of Ultima 3. I hear there are people who say that was their gateway into Ultima. And I have also not played The Magic of Scheherazade, although people who play that game also speak well of it.
Yeah, like, a boring answer to this is just Final Fantasy 2, right?
Or Earthbound 1.
God, Earthbound is so slow, though. It's so fucking slow.
Yeah,
We're not playing Mother
Fucking
1.
glacial.
That game is just grindy as shit.
In a genre full of
It's
grindy
not
stuff.
fun.
Like, that's the other thing about Dragon Quest 1, too, that's kind of remarkable, is it's not nearly as grindy as most of its peers, right? Like, I played that damn Necromancer game on PC Engine and wrote a thing about it on Giant Bomb, and that is, I felt the ravages of age happening to me in my brief time with that game. It's staggering. Like, it's not like Dragon Quest 1 has, like, big money drops or big XP drops per thing you are fighting. It's just that the XP curve and economy are scaled down to, like, align with that in a way that's
I also
nice.
just, like, kind of... I know that I, on the podcast, complained about the times that it feels too bespoke, like getting that thing for that princess. But, like, there's a linearity to Dragon Quest 1 that I greatly appreciated, that once you start to get into Earthbound, once you start to get into some of these other games, like, especially this one that we just played, yeah, it starts to get a little too, like you used to say, Jeff, you can piss straighter lines in the snow than walk in a dungeon in these sorts of games.
I like them, and I like looking at them less. When I get into a tile-based dungeon, I'm reminded that I might actually not like them, but in theory, they're wonderful, right? Like, it's like...
Welcome to Off the Deep End, the Deep Listens podcast where my 2 co-hosts are complete babies.
Pee-pee, poo-poo babies.
Braden, every single time we have played an NES-era game, you have complained just as much as the rest of us.
Yeah, but no, you hate tiles. I understand.
Look, I co-voted Might and Magic 6 at the top of this list. Okay.
Might and Magic 6 does
I
have
know.
tiles.
I'm wondering how much better it would have been with tiles, because my main complaint about it, in some sense, was I miss just linear, nice, chunky movement.
Let me tell you about Might and Magic 4 and 5.
I know.
I mean, if you really wanted to push me, like, the number of RPGs on the original Famicom / NES, there's like 8. We don't need to go down our list.
Yeah. All right, let's rank
this. All right, rank it.
The top 3 on this list, which is bit.ly/OTTE rank, we have on the 3rd place, getting the bronzes, Xenosaga Episode 1, Derville Zermacht. The silver position on the podium is Suikoden. Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven, is the best RPG ever made. According to us, don't question it. At the bottom of this list, going down, we have Secret of the Stars, under which is Aiden Chronicles the First Mage. I continue to wonder about this. Under which is Unlimited Saga, which I never wonder about. So, middle of this list, the midpoint right now is East 3, Wanderers from East. Comfortably, I would say this is better than East 3. How do you feel?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I say we scroll up to a more meaningful comparison, which would be Dragon Quest 1 on the NES. Who you got?
I like Dragon Quest 1 because
I
that
like Dragon
game,
Quest 1 more than this.
that game got its shit in and got its shit out way quicker And also, I feel like even though Dragon Quest 1 has a lot less going for it, there's a coherence to that video game. A brutal simplicity to that game. I much more appreciated and enjoyed.
All right, so that's where it's going to go. It's going to under Hybrid Heaven and above Nox.
Wait.
Right below Hybrid Heaven. Yep, we all co-signed that.
What?
Everyone agrees Hybrid Heaven is better.
I mean, Hybrid Heaven does let you power bomb a lizard man.
So, right above Nox, right below. This game is better than Hybrid Heaven.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Okay, that's where it's going then. I just thought it would be fun.
Are you number 14?
Monogatari.
Ake Monogatari.
Monogatari. Digital Devil Monogatari.
Now are we going to start quoting Adam Sessler about JRPGs?
No.
Shut your...
Okay.
By the time this comes out, that joke will already have been lost to time.
I give this game a 4.
Look it up.
Unless you're watching this live.
NES. Whatever episode this is, I will fill in later. And this was nominated again by Borgmaster. Thank you, Borgmaster.
All right.
It's on the list. It's official. It is the 14th
Hooray.
best RPG ever made so far.
Yep.
Period. So that's neat. That's the show. It's time to... I guess we aren't drawing. This is a ZP choice. ZP, you've been very evasive.
Wait. Oh, yes. I have been very evasive. I've been so evasive. I've been deeply evasive. I've been threatening both of you with...
You've been putting points into agility.
I've been putting points into deception. I've been putting points into stealth. I've been putting points into intelligence. I feel like my picks have been criminally underrated. If I could, I'd like to go to the Supreme Court for a recount, but I know that would be a fruitless thing given current circumstances.
You picked Grandia 2, the number 4 game on our list.
So when I say the year of pandering, I've actually done extensive research into both of you. I've looked at the games that you've ranked in certain lists. I've looked at the handful of games that you've all reviewed. So I'm going to start with Jeff. Jeff, you're a simple man. Jeff, I have read you. Like
that's the end of the show.
Forward and backwards. Jeff, my pick is Etrian Odyssey 4.
Oh, Chris. Oh, you sweet baby. That's wonderful.
Oh, you silly, silly man.
I am...
That's all... You just pick it, seeing the Venn diagram of games that Jeff and I like, and picking the one that overlaps.
You know me. I want to be in the top 5, and I want to dominate. I'm going to take this super competitive as if I'm Gino that Pinguino, seeing competition where there does not need to be any.
I mean...
But yes. Etrian Odyssey 4. I thought, we've done a dungeon crawler. We've done spelunking of bits and pieces here and there. Why not play a good one of those? I maybe should pick 3 because
another high quality Atlas dungeon crawler.
One might say.
Wait, should I pick 3 because the HD remasters are coming out? Be honest with me.
Do you have a 3DS? Okay.
I do.
Because I don't own a copy of 3
good?
right now, but I am literally...
Well, again, a remaster is coming out. Oh, wait, the remasters are coming out in June. Yeah, let's go with 4.
I am looking at an open 3DS right now, and I am looking at the Etrian Odyssey 4 icon right there on my, play these area of my menu.
Game of the year, according to Eric Wolpaw.
I like Etrian Odyssey 4 a lot. I did all of the post-game shit in that game, which I have not done for any of the other games in the series.
You got to the Hall of Darkness.
Yeah, I did the whole thing.
Fight against Yggdrasil?
Sure. You fight a giant evil bug.
I'm gonna put down Virtue's Last Reward and go back to playing this on my convenience.
Like I said, my pretties, I've read you. I know you. I've made a
See,
pact with the devil to
if I wanted to
dominate
pick
the
a game
future of
you'd
this
like,
podcast.
I don't know what I'd pick because you just self-intentionally consume garbage and hate yourself for it.
I thought we would have a good time by playing the RPG adventure game, but then Jeff's like, I hate adventure game. Blah. So fine.
They
I'll
should
play
make
you.
a good one.
I'll play
and
you.
then I would be into that.
I'll play you. Got you. I got you.
Okay. Well, Etrian Odyssey 4 still available digitally for another 2 weeks as of the recording of this
2
episode.
weeks. Like literally download this now.
At which point you could still go down
It's the best one.
Wink.
Nexus is also very good.
I don't think this is a game that's like out of the ordinary on eBay. Let me check.
Doubt. Yeah.
Oh.
Everything 3DS
okay.
went really insane
Nope.
over the last year.
Yeah,
Nope.
all of that shit
this
went
is
way
it.
up
$50
after
to
Nintendo.
$70. Okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has the Atlas tax. It has the 3DS tax. It has
Which is ironic given that you could get every single Atlas game on 3DS for a song.
Yeah, different time.
During
Okay,
their
I'm
eShop
gonna
sales.
download this now on the 3DS eShop.
I'm gonna get back to it. That was an episode of Off the Deep End. It is ending now, which is why I'm getting to the ending of this document. But before I get all the way to the ending, there's some things I need to say, such as thank you, and also thank you for tuning in, and also this was Off the Deep End, and also
Supersex 420.
Supersex 420 wrote the song that you're hearing, and also inquiries at deep.lol is a place to send emails. Also, the Patreon is patreon.com/deeplistens. Thanks for the song Halfway. Thank you to Supersex 420. Also, thank you to Supersex.
Thank you
and
to
420.
ZP for picking a good
Thank
game.
you to Etrian Odyssey 420. See you next time. And remember, there's no such thing as cheating in a single-player game. Especially this one, because there's fusions. You can just fuse yourself out of a lot of situations. It's really neat.
Don't watch the
Don't
OVA.
watch the OVA. It's quite bad.
Don't watch Cleopatra.
Except maybe find the scene where a woman gets captured and gets bit on her.
This episode of Off the Deep End was recorded and edited on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Nisqually or Nisqually people, who have lived on and stewarded these lands and waters since times immemorial.